Hey, what's going on? This is Beer Today, Beer Tomorrow. We are back at it. Perry, how you doing, man?
Can't complain. I mean, enjoyable summer, lots of great beer. Put down my first year in the city finally, so
congrats.
Excited to continue on.
Congrats on that. So BTBT, we're back. This is our first episode after our summer break, and we're very excited because we have two very, very special guests here with us today. Gentlemen, please introduce yourselves.
Sure. Andrew Berman. I live in Astoria, Queens, and I've been homebrewing for about 6 years.
All right.
Jason Stein. I'm a beer writer. I used to write for Pace Magazine, now mainly for Hop Culture Magazine.
Right on, guys. So let's jump right into it. So, starting with you, Andrew. How did you get into the whole craft beer scene?
Actually, Jason and I have been friends for a pretty long time. We both went to the University of Michigan together. My friend Matt Federico, who I brew with, we all went to college together. And Michigan has just an absolutely incredible craft beer scene. Growing up, we graduated in 2009. I think that was kind of right when craft beer was really exploding, and to have Bell's Brewery and Founders Brewery in Ann Arbor being able to drink Two Hearted, Oberon, Hop Slam. Yeah. I mean, that really got us going into craft beer.
Yeah, so there's a ton of, I know going to college on campus, there'd be a ton of beer shops, and there was a craft beer bar right within the campus, Ashley's it's called, and they would have 50 different beers on tap at all times, rotating. And so I think, at least for me, that was kind of, and I'm sure for Andrew too, because he was with me at the time, that was kind of what really brought me into craft beer to start, and really that first time trying Hop Slam, I would say. It's crazy how much beer has changed since then, because right now Hop Slam is on the shelves everywhere in cans, but back then it would be this once a year thing that would be on tap, and we'd just go absolutely crazy. And a college kid drinking a 10%. IPA, you didn't really know it at first, and I remember the first few times we had it, I would go home and I would be like, I'm gonna fucking die tonight. And I would never realize that I had 3 beers, and I was like, what's going on? But it was just that transition right there to beers like Hop Slam, and even from Great Lakes, Edmund Fitzgerald, these beers that we really never saw on the East Coast that kind of blew us away, at least for me.
Oh, yeah. Hop Slam was one of those, definitely. They would do a firkin and the keg itself as an event, so you could, get a taste of it with that warmer, natural carbonation, but either way, you were only doing 2 or 3 and you were done.
Yeah. I've had some really, really bad nights with Hop Slam in my past. I should not talk about this again. That is one beer that, I've always seeked out ever since, and it's been a special.
But it's pretty amazing how craft beer has changed. I mean, and which doesn't seem like that much time, us being in school, which is, I guess now, that was 10 to 12 years ago, drinking those beers to how your palate's changed, the types of beers you go for. I mean, those were the days of just slamming hops, the bitterness, that type of flavor. You never thought that was possible.
I was like that. It was Hop Slam. It was Sierra Nevada Optimum.
Yeah.
Those beers, even trying beers like Hetty back then, I was like, holy shit, this is what I want. I remember even I know Andrew used with Matt, who's not here. They used to make these drives every year to a store in Pennsylvania to get a case of Hop Slam.
Yeah.
They had limit to a case.
We did that.
And it was called Shangies.
Yeah.
Shangies. So they drive up once a year, get a case, bring it back. I was trading like crazy at the time, and I had friends in Michigan who would basically ship me every year a case of Hop Slam. And it was
nice.
Holy grail.
It's good friends.
I just sit there drinking what I could and still survive. But
So now, before you guys got into craft beer, what was the beer of choice?
I mean, in college would drink a ton of Bud Light. I mean, I think, I don't think it was until we were really, of drinking age where you really started going to bars and you're like, oh, wow, there's other types of things available to you. It was sort of whatever cheap free beer you can drink, you would take,
I remember one time, I don't remember why, he bought a sixtel of Sam Adams cherry wheat. And I thought I was sophisticated as fuck buying this sixtel.
Oh, yeah.
And it must have lasted no one wanted to drink at the party. It lasted a complete week. We just every day we're I guess we gotta take another pour of this. But back then I was like, this is it. And I was always searching Sam Adams cherry wheat. And kind of going to those bars like Ashley's kind of like opened us up to completely different things.
Well, yeah, it's amazing that, you talked about the access and availability and how craft beer is growing. I mean, 6-7 years ago, there really wasn't much going on here in Queens. Yeah. And for New York, really, for the most part, I mean, there were always certain places that did have craft beer, but it's just exploded as of late. Where do you guys kind of see the current state of craft beer here in New York, and where do you think it's going next?
It is interesting. I do remember going back to Hop Slam. Bell's wasn't here in 2013, like 5 years ago. I think they came in 2012, 2013, and I would have to travel to I would go to DC and bring Top Slam back. And there's no beers that would really excite me that were in New York up until 2012, 2013. I don't know. I think that's right when Other Half showed up, was right around then. I remember going there, and it was just that tiny room. There was 15 of us online waiting for a triple IPA. I think it was all green everything and maybe green diamonds. And I remember going there and bringing it back and being like, holy shit, there's a brewery that makes beer that I want to buy in New York. And to think of the change from that then to now, where I don't know what the count is, I'm assuming there's probably 30, 40 breweries in New York City. And there's a lot of breweries that I actually want to go to. It's crazy to think how much it's changed, really. I think Andrew jump in, but going forward, I feel like we've only just hit a certain level. I feel like there's a lot more to grow in New York. Everyone kind of thinks that we hit this bubble, but I don't think we're even close. You think of how big this city is, and to think of there's only 30, 40 breweries, and there's probably, is there none in Manhattan? Maybe there's one in Manhattan.
I think Torch and Crown is, I think, going to open in a Manhattan brew pub, I believe. Yeah. But there's not much in Manhattan. I mean, I think for me, I've been a part of the Brooklyn Brewsers homebrew club for 5 or 6 years, and our initial members are almost all of them are brewing professionally in the city. So Pete and KCBC, we have from Gun Hill, Transmitter, we have guys brewing at Rockaway. It's just really been cool to see guys who are these passionate homebrewers. I mean, the funny thing is homebrewing is still a very, very small community in New York City. I mean, Bitter Nesters is the only homebrew store in all of New York City, which is kind of nuts. Yeah. And it's a small community, and it's pretty cool to see a lot of guys, other people that I've done homebrew events with, Killsborough lineup. I've done homebrew events, and see them succeed in the city, I think is really, really awesome. I do think there's a challenge in the city. It's expensive to open up in New York City. I mean, it's kind of cool. I think it'll be interesting to see how breweries expand. I mean, it's really interesting, Other Half expanding outside of New York City. Right. Will more breweries open up, second locations that are more like bars? Something like that might be kind of interesting. But yeah, it's a really exciting time. I mean, even in Astoria, there's great craft beer bars opening.
Absolutely.
It's great that basically every neighborhood has a good craft beer bar now, and a good craft brewery pretty close by too. So, it's really nice. It's great to go to a bar and be able to look at the board and go, oh, there's some great New York City beer available that I can just drink and just keep to New York City beer.
Absolutely. And you mentioned great breweries right here in Astoria. You got Single Cut and Iconic. And to me, Single Cut is one of my favorite breweries in New York in general. I love what they're doing over there. And you're right. This didn't exist a few years ago. So, and I agree with you, Jason. I don't think a lot of people have said, I've heard about the bubble. I think it's a different kind of bubble. And we've spoke about this on the show before. I think it's not so much that there's not room for more breweries. I think it's the breweries who are going to succeed are going to be tasked with focusing more on the business side of things. They can't just be brewers with good beer. It's got to be, they got to be able to do the marketing, and they got to be able to do the numbers. It's actually running it like a business. And I think that's going to be the determining factor of if a brewery survives or it doesn't. Yeah. But I do believe that there's definitely look, Astoria in itself is only 2 breweries here. There's definitely more room for than just two, you know, and other areas too. I mean, Staten Island has what, they have one, or I know they have Killsborough. I'm not sure if they have anything else out there.
I think there's one more down there.
I think there's like Staten Island Brewery.
Something I can never forget the name, but I've seen it mentioned in passing.
Yeah.
Staten Island feels like it's just not part of New York. It feels like it's like another. It's no. I like Staten Island. I like Staten Island, but if I got to take a boat to get somewhere, it just feels like.
Yeah, I mean,
it's far away.
I mean, I just think about, you know, even in Pittsburgh, since I've left, I think 2 or 3 more have opened just in this past year.
Yep.
And I mean, you look at, I think Allegheny County probably has 20 or 30 as well, right? And the entire population of that county is probably less than a third of Brooklyn or something.
Yeah. I think the challenge with New York City, though, is yes, there's less breweries, but you're competing against a lot more, right? Yeah. So if you can go out in New York City, I mean, you can go out and go wherever you want. You can go to a really cool, awesome speakeasy, cocktail lounge, you know. There's so many different neighborhoods you can go out with. So you're kind of competing, especially when, you know, obviously on-site sales is really how breweries are going to succeed. And when you're competing against all these other places, you know, not just against another brewery, but against another type of bar or activity in New York City, I think that's going to be kind of a challenge. And I can see, how do more breweries make interesting experiences, right? We've all kind of had like, okay, you know, you're in the warehouse setting, you know, how do you make a more interesting on-site experience for people to get more people in the door when they can kind of now go to like a really, really cool lounge and get that same beer on tap. So
yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of breweries, in my experience here at least, you know, most of them seem like they can sustain themselves just on like selling direct on premise, which is nice because that, you know, that means a brewery can grow its own way that way. But yeah, definitely the distribution, and I don't even mean like, you know, off premise canning bottles, like. Yeah, just getting accounts at bars, like it's hard because there's a million places to drink here. But again, you're fighting big beer and you're fighting local beer in a good way, but it's still a battle.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think, you know, that's why you mentioned differentiated experiences, and I think that's why a lot of like breweries, you know, they're pet friendly, they're trying to be family friendly, they're trying to get people in there, they connect with the food trucks, and they're trying to make it an experience. But you know, you're right. There's a lot of competition, because although I can speak freely, I think for the group here, we love going to breweries, but you know, there is something about going to that bar where you can have 10, 12, 15, 20 different beers from 20 different breweries, and you know, that's kind of what they're up against. And not to mention just the cost. You know, it's tough for the brewery. We've had a lot of brewery owners tell us, you know, you don't get into it for the money. You know, it's definitely a labor of passion and love. But I do think that it's going to expand, and I do think it's going to continue to grow. I think it's just that the breweries need to they got to put on the brew hat and the business hat. Like before, in the beginning, it was like you make good beer, people will come. Now, you know, you can't just rely on having good beer. It's like you have to have good beer, but you have to have good business sense too.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've seen that a lot. I mean, recently, I won't, you know, like name names, but you've heard in, you know, breweries locally, just here, you know, buying other brewery spaces because, you know, another brewery thought, oh, well, everyone wants beer, so I will just take out a huge loan, get all this new equipment, new space, and I'll be able to just automatically succeed. And that's just not the case. I think, as you said, there's obviously room to grow because the breweries that are brewing good beer have good business sense, are capitalizing that, sort of taking over these other breweries and are expanding that way. So I think there's definitely room for expansion, but I just, as you said, yeah, you have to have a really good business sense going forward.
Absolutely. So now, let's talk a little bit more about the home brewing that you guys do. So tell us a little bit about your process, the kind of styles that get you guys the most excited, and just overall like your experience up until this point with home brewing.
Yeah, so I brew with our other friend from college, Matt Federico. He is on vacation this weekend. We've been homebrewing together for about 6 years or so. Kind of started, you know, in that sort of way of, oh, we like craft beer. Why don't we just try doing this ourselves? You know, complete failure the first time we did it. Really didn't know what we were doing. But you kind of make something, you know, with a little alcohol and taste decent, and you go, okay, I want to continue to try doing this. So we've kind of experimented with brewing for Probably, I always tell people it really took us a good 2 years to kind of figure out what we were really doing. We were kind of experimenting with different styles, but really just kind of getting process down. And probably in the last 4 years or so where we've really felt like we've dialed it in. Part of that, I think I mentioned, I'm part of a homebrew club, Brooklyn Brewsers,
right.
That meets second Monday of every month at Bowery Lane. I've met some amazing, really smart, talented people in that homebrew club, and I think learning from them has really helped us sort of expand our brewing techniques. But we brew a lot of different types of beers. I would say we kind of look for things sort of in the anywhere from a 4 to 7% ABV range. We do a lot of different IPAs, pale ales. I poured for you guys earlier a Kolsch, lightly dry hop, Kolsch style, I should say, ale. So we brew in my apartment here in Astoria, 5-gallon batches. So I have a freezer chest where I can fit 3 kegs, a couple different freezer chests for fermentation. We do explore into sour, long-term sour aging, have a 10-gallon barrel that we do kind of different sour beer experiments in. And I said the homebrew community is really a great community here. We do a lot of homebrew events throughout the city, homebrew competitions. It's just a really great way to try other people's beers, be inspired by other people's beers and really be part of a cool community. I've made some really awesome friends, homebrewers and professional brewers through the beer community. I think that's one of the best things about craft beers. There's really amazing people you meet. I think, Jason and I have known each other for a long time. We bonded and strengthened our friendship through craft beer. And I have some really close friends that I've made through craft beer. So I think, and home brewing. So I think that's really the best thing about it. So
yeah, it's definitely for sure. Yeah, I mean, for home brewing for me. So I obviously did not home brew as long as Andrew. I always came here and watched them home brew. Kind of wanted to learn the process. It kind of really took off when we started this Back to Basics series for hop culture. So the Back to Basics series was an idea I had for the last probably like 2-3 years. It was something I always wanted to do. I just, through all the connections from all the writing, I always wanted to have a professional brewer come and brew a beer in my apartment. The problem was I knew absolutely jack shit about homebrew. So I basically enlisted Andrew to kind of help me learn how to do homebrews. So I started homebrewing in my apartment, not 5-gallon, but 1 gallon, now 3 gallon. It's getting more and more and more as I got along. But I kind of wanted to learn the process because I felt it was a little strange for me to be reviewing people's beers and kind of telling what I thought about people's beers without having any idea about the process. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to have Andrew kind of teach me the process of homebrewer. So when I speak to a brewer, I understand what went right, what went wrong, what they could have done differently, be able to speak to flavors I'm tasting or things that could have changed in the process now that could affect the beer. So I just kind of dove in. Unfortunately, since Andrew's been brewing for 5-6 years, his equipment was pretty out there for not your normal average starting home brewer. So I kind of jumped in and spent way too much money just buying everything. So my fiance probably hates me right now because we had one of these freezer chests that you see here, like a big white freezer chest in the middle of our apartment, and it's hosting.
It's a decorative piece.
It's beautiful. I mean, you can put anything on top of it.
Right.
Put something on it, but it's hosting always a keg and a carboy. Right now, this is a.
You tell us about that. What do you got going on there?
So this is kind of a series I started. It was called Lumberjack Style. Got the name from actually a Rakim rap song.
Nice.
So it's a 11.5% stout. This one's aged on toasted coconuts. I did a 5-gallon batch. It was the first time trying to do a 5-gallon batch, and I split it between, just split it in half. Half of it is aged in maple syrup from Vermont.
Wow.
The other half is this that we're going to keg at halftime during the Michigan game. So this started out as our first Back to Basics we did with Brandon Tolbert, who was the head brewer at the time for the Answer Brew Pub. I took that style and changed it to be more of a stout. That was a porter that we did. And then I just kind of just reached out to brewers that I knew. I reached out to Voodoo in Homestead. I reached out to head brewer to kind of get some feedback. I reached out to a bunch of head brewers actually and just got their thoughts on how I could really improve the recipe because it was the first time I was brewing stout. And I felt that kind of having all these people in the beer community, I should ask. I know that if I did this on my own, it would have been a total piece of shit. I'd rather reach out to people I know, reach out to Andrew, reach out to the guys at Voodoo, several other breweries, and just kind of get their thoughts on the recipe. Once I was happy with the recipe, I brewed it once. Had some issues the first time. I bottled it. I had poured it for a bunch of brewers. They're like, actually, this is actually quite good for a first stout. So I made some changes. This is the second batch, so I have no idea how it will turn out. And as you can see, kind of fucked up with the coconut. So we will see how this turns out.
Be positive.
Yeah. Be cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, cautiously optimistic is the way to go. So we'll see how this goes. We're going to take this later. So yeah, I mean, it's just a series of stouts that I've been working on. It's the same recipe. I just kind of tweak it every so often, different yeast, different grains, but pretty much the same stout, treated with different adjuncts each time. Working on getting barrels for it, and then we'll see
Oh, wow.
how it goes from there. Right now, yeah, there's a maple syrup place, single barrel cellar in Massachusetts that has a barrel of maple syrup barrel. They've been holding for me for a while, and hopefully get the next one in there. And yeah, it kind of just I wanted to learn the whole process just for that Back to Basics series, and then it helps a lot. We do the first two Back to Basics were here. It's pretty crazy and pretty cool when you think about it to have a professional brewer come to this apartment in Astoria.
Sure.
And we had them here. We're like collaborating on a recipe, and they're here for the brew day, just hanging out, and we're just doing a full like collaboration on a beer. Just right here, it's kind of crazy to think about it that it's actually worked thus far.
I think most people, it's funny. I think what you think of like if you go across the U.S. and think of like what a home brewer is, I think like the average stats, it's kind of like 50-year-old dad brewing in his garage, and people have very elaborate homebrew setups. I have a 500-something square foot 1-bedroom apartment in Astoria, and if you look, I mean, I have a New York City stove.
Right. But
so
you've optimized your space though very, very well.
But I think it's definitely a surprise for guys. Who brewing from outside of the city to come in and kind of see what type of setup you're working with. But it's pretty amazing if I'd hopefully think I know what I'm doing. You can kind of still make some good beer if you don't have super fancy equipment. So
absolutely,
it's crazy that for Brandon for the answer to come down here, he walked in the door not expecting anything, and we're like, oh, we're gonna put you to work. We're gonna start mashing into this Gatorade jug right now. But it's been really, really cool.
That was a fun brew day. I said it's pretty. Most people don't start homebrewing and brew 11% stouts like what Jason did. But so he's like, yeah, I want to do this beer. It was like a 12% stout with the type of equipment we did. We did actually it's called a polygyle mash. So we did a regular mash, collected our wort, and then ran that wort through a second set of grains. So it's sort of like the wort got two mashes to get the ABV to where we wanted. So that was a really interesting experience and very fun, about a 13, 14-hour day.
It was a very, very, very long day. But that kind of started it all. Just when you invite a professional brewery, hey, please come to our apartment in Astoria to brew a home brew. I was a little skeptical if it would work at first.
Why not? I mean, these guys started out somewhere, right?
I know. That's been the cool thing is that we've reached out to people. I talked to Suarez about it, and he's like, "This sounds awesome. I always wanted to do a homebrew again. Let me know later in the year." I talked last week to Aliash about it. We even talked to other half about it. There's breweries that think they haven't done this in a while, and a lot of these head brewers aren't as deep into the brew day as they used to be.
Right.
Again, and you kind of go back to what you really brought you in the first place, and kind of sitting here in our modest Astoria brew house, like, kind of brings them back to the
It's
good,
nostalgic.
brings them back to the good times of where like they really fell in love with it, and it's been really cool to kind of take that and run with it. So we did that one, we did Zach from Kent Falls, and we did Kyle from Horace Age Ales, but we did it at another location for that one with our buddy Dave, who's Mindful Ales.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, we interviewed him on.
Brew for Cure.
Yep.
Yeah. I like what he's doing. He had some really good beers at that event.
Some cool stuff.
Yeah. Shout out to Mindful Ales. But yeah, no, that's awesome. I'm not surprised that, we always talk about on the show that craft beer is community. So we're not surprised that these guys, kind of came through and did that here. I'm sure, like you said, a lot of these guys now are a little bit more backed away from the process in the breweries, and they probably have the opportunity. Not only is it nostalgic, they can get a little creative, and worst comes to worst, they could just blame you guys if it doesn't come out right. So.
That's why I do it here, so I can blame it. But yeah, no, it's cool because I always say like we'll brew anything you want. If you want, we can replicate a recipe that you have and just kind of just make our alterations on it. If there's a beer style that you've always wanted to brew and you couldn't really feasibly do it at your brewery,
large scale,
just anything. We're down for anything here, but it's been really, really cool. The Brandon one was really cool, very interesting because it was at the time when Brandon was leaving The Answer, and so we were doing this brew day as he was now leaving to start his own brewery. Although the whole thing's billed as Brandon from The Answer.
Right.
That was an interesting one, and then Zach was just being named, I think, the head brewer for Kent Falls, literally weeks after we actually did the homebrew here. That was really cool. He was super into it, came in, had a bag of spruce branches. He ripped off the trees that morning from the farm.
Yeah, it was very cool.
Wow.
And bags of aged hops from 2012.
We were just literally sucking on the branch just to try it. A little bit a grapefruit note to it.
He walked in and he's like, "Hey, try this. Take a bite." And you're like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
No, it was good. It was very cool, and he's a really, really nice guy.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm really I'm excited for him being named the head brewer because he has some really cool things he's thought about and kind of bringing his experiences from all the places he's been to now be the head brewer of Kent Falls. I think really cool things that come out of that.
Right. So, now, quick question for you: how did you get into the whole journalism aspect of craft beer?
So that one's a strange one. So my fiance is a full-time journalist for a few publications. She was at Paste magazine at the time.
Okay.
They had been reaching out to her to write articles about beer. So I would write articles, she would edit them, and she would submit them under her name. And then it got to a point where they're like, can you keep giving us more of these beer articles? And she was like, can my boyfriend just do it? Because he's the one writing these articles anyway. So that's kind of how it kind of blew up. And yeah, I at the time, I was recovering from, I think, a hip surgery. So I was off from work on disability. And I had so much time, I had nothing to do. And I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to just go all out. And I just started writing multiple articles every week, reaching out to breweries that I didn't think would ever respond to me, reaching out to Sean at Hill Farmstead, Levi at Funk Factory, JC at Trillium, reaching out to all these brewers that I didn't think would actually give me the light of day. And they were totally down to talk. And I was like, I kind of like this. I really enjoy having these conversations. I mean, before that, it was just me. I had a blog, but nobody read it other than myself. It basically I'd go to a beer
I
shop.
read it once in a while.
Yeah, do not read it.
Hit counter 2.
I would basically go to beer shares, come home tipsy / drunk, and just be like, I'm just gonna write, and it'd be filled with. I'd be like, Maggie, my fiance, please, can you take a look at this? And she'd be like, this is awful writing. Because I'd be drunk and I just wouldn't care. There'd be spelling mistakes, there'd be words missing, but I just kind of would do it whenever I got the chance, just to get my thoughts on paper. So to finally get a chance to get things out there for real, was pretty cool. And it's kind of like snowballed from there.
Awesome. Very, very awesome. So I want to go around the table, and Perry, I'll start with you. I want to kind of, this is now, at the time of this recording, September 1st, summer, unfortunately, is officially over. So I just wanted to get, you guys, what is, one or two really, really good beers this past summer that really stood out for you? Something you really enjoyed.
For me, I actually got to say the other half did a series of Berliners this summer called Fruit.
That's right, yeah.
And I think they did 5 or 6 different, fruit versions, if you will. I actually picked one up yesterday. I haven't tried it yet. But they did a strawberry rhubarb, I think it was, or strawberry apricot, which was like perfect. Just tart enough to be really good for the summer, but still had a lot of flavor going on. But they were all really easy drinking. Like, just take them down, no problem at all. I had some decent ones from Grimm as well. Although, actually, as it was other half, I think when I picked up that strawberry beer, they had an amazing Kolsch named like Tanzenhall Flughal. I don't know. It's like an airport thing. It's got a guy like waving down an airplane kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like Flughal Tenshofer or something. But that was probably the most crushable beer I had all summer. Like, no questions asked.
Right.
Because it was just a really clean Kolsch, but it had just enough of a hoppy bite at the end that it kept it really interesting.
Very nice. Very nice. Jason?
Put me on the spot. I'm trying to think of who I had. The only one that comes to mind that is new that I had this summer was actually the beer from Zach. He had this beer called Yeesh, which is like a Czech Pilsner. And it was really, really, really fucking good. And it's super crushable. We had went up there to Suarez, and we had like 2 side-by-side how different Palatine Pills is, which is, at least for me, the best pills in the world, Palatine Pills. And
it's really good.
Having like those 2 different like styles of pills next to each other is like pretty incredible. I think that one for me. I'm trying to think of what else I've had. I don't think I could think of anything else right now.
I think that was a pretty good answer. That's a good beer.
I guess also if I could give one more, I guess Tachyon from Equilibrium. Their pale ale. I've always been a fan of their pale ales, and I always give them shit to brew Photon as much as possible. they brewed it once for their first can release, and then they waited a year, and every week I would just send like messages to their head brewer and people there being like, so when's Photon coming out? And then they brewed a beer called Tachyon, and I was like, shit, this is actually better than Photon. So now Tachyon reigns king for me for the pale ales. But yeah, probably those 2.
Nice. Andrew?
Yeah, I would say we went up to Foam a few weekends ago for their Funk on the Water festival. I think one what stood out to me was I think it's an amazing space. They did an incredible job with the festival. Just incredibly impressed with their presentation of everything. Their beers are great. I had a really great beer from Wunderkammer, who's the brewer. I think he works. I believe he's at Hill Farmstead.
Yeah, he was like a assistant brewer for a while, and then when stuff shifted around, he started his own.
I think
like
he's still
in there.
brewed.
But I mean, it's under his own label.
Yeah,
obviously,
so I was really impressed with that. And then locally, just because I want to give a shout out to the Queens Breweries. I'm friendly with the Big Alice guys, and I was drinking a lot of their fruited sours this summer. Were great. So
they really stepped up their production game as far as the releases and everything they've been doing the past 6 months, probably more than that actually. But I like the Big Alice guys. Good group of guys down there. Shout out to Big Alice.
Yeah, that was it. The mojito they had at the anniversary.
At the anniversary, that was good.
That was one of the better ones. I had. I remember really liking that day.
Right. Yeah. And you mentioned before you came here, you had the Fistful of Rubies. That was good too. I remember I was there for that release. It's good beer. Yeah. For me, so actually the one beer, I mean, there were many beers I had this summer that was really good, but the one that stands out in my memory the freshest was What Is My Purpose? So it was an IPA from Mustache Brewery. They're way out there in Long Island, Riverhead. And I think it's a Rick and Morty reference for all the Rick and Morty heads out there, but really good. I mean, I just was really, really impressed. I mean, I like Mustache. Actually, I have family that's a little bit further out, but not that far from the brewery. So I'll get from time to time. I've always liked what I've gotten from them, but that really, really impressed me. And shout out to Benedict Beer Blog. He actually they're his buddies, the people who own the brewery, and they actually just did a collab, which I have in my fridge, which I haven't tried yet, but I will try, Benny. I promise. I'm going to try that. And but shout out to Mustache and shout out to Benedict Beer Blog. So guys, is there anything you guys have coming up that you'd like to talk about? Any brews in the works? Any events? And also, just shout out if you guys have your Instagram or the best way people can kind of follow you and see what you guys are up to and all the cool stuff that you guys are getting down with. Please, the platform is yours.
Yeah, sure. My Instagram is Berman Brew. Matt and I are homebrewers. We do a lot of homebrewing events. I think a lot of our the homebrewing events we do kind of come up further in the winter and spring. But for us, we purchased a canner a few months ago. So
it's fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And so we're just really focused. So we've just been really trying to get our beers out to more people. We've done a lot of homebrew events. It's great to get feedback there. It's always great to win a medal once in a while. But we really just want to get more beers out to people, get cans out to people, get feedback, hopefully gain some awareness for what we're doing and kind of get a sense of, hey, maybe is this something we can do on a broader scale down the road.
Well,
so
that's what I wanted to ask. Is that the long-term vision?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a dream for any home brewer to always say, hey, yeah, let's open our own brewery. I always been kind of telling people, we're in the feasibility study, trying to figure out what's possible. But for us, it's really the main focus is making quality beer, one, and then two, kind of getting it out there to people. Hopefully people will know more about us, and that will kind of give us a sense of, hey, maybe this is something we can actually do. So that's really our focus.
Right on.
Yeah. I guess things coming for us, for me. Nothing really that much on the horizon. I think we're trying to figure out who's going to be next for the Back to Basics series. Like I said, we've spoken to Dan Soares, spoke to Jason last week from Allagash, so I think those are both on the radar for the rest of the year. I think Andrew and I have been talking about possibly doing one for Hop Cultures. We're doing a festival in New York City in December.
Right. Yeah.
So we're talking about what we could brew that would be able to pour there. So kind of limits us in terms of styles to make sure that something's ready. So probably something either like an IPA or probably a kettle sour. Yeah, I think it's pretty much that's what I've been focusing on that right now. And kind of more the Back to Basics thing. I was telling Andrew before we actually sat down that I was asked if I'd want to possibly expand some of the Back to Basic beers to a professional level. This morning, someone reached out to be like, "Hey, would you be interested in rebrewing some of the beers on more of a commercial level so that we can get to more people?" So that's something I kind of was thrown out this morning. So I need to think about whether that's something that we could possibly do in the future. And
And Jason's also getting married in
That's right.
In 3 weeks.
Congratulations, buddy.
I was told no beer things, so I might be murdered.
Yeah, but
Well, you could homebrew. You could cater the event, right?
We also brewed two beers for his wedding, so
there you
that's
go.
been keeping us busy. A nice Sixture Galaxy IPA will be poured.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we have Happily Ever After Sixture Galaxy beer. We have Till Death, which is the beer we did Brandon.
That's an imperial stout with bourbon barrel aged vanilla beans.
So
nice.
big.
Very nice.
I have Kyle from Horror Sage Ales did a big stout with almonds, and I have a Boca Rider blend for that as well. So a lot of wedding beers.
Got a lot going on, man.
A lot of wedding beers.
Very, very cool.
Never have too much for a night like that, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, if they're too heavy, like the double IPA, I don't know if your fiance is going to want you slamming double IPAs and IPAs.
So we've decided. I was told I cannot be drunk, so we.
Oh, come on.
Well, I won't
Boo.
be drunk till the end. And then, so
Fair
I'm
enough.
gonna
That's
be-
fair. That's
I'm
fair.
gonna bring mostly probably pills, like Berman's beer, and then some other things, just cans for the actual reception, and the after party will be stouts.
Is your soon-to-be wife, is she into craft beer? Not at all?
She's gluten-free.
A gluten. Well, you got to. That's your next big project. You got to brew a gluten-free craft beer.
Well, we got into mead for a while, which
Okay.
went down a rabbit hole because now I have so much mead in my apartment. She's like, some of it's a little sweet. I don't really want to be drinking it. And I'm like, great, I'm going to be drinking. I'm drinking all this mead by myself now.
There you go.
Yeah. So that's why I brought like an absurd amount of cans for this, because otherwise I'd have to consume it all myself.
Well, we are happy to help.
Yeah.
We are happy
Including
to
like
help.
stouts like this, yeah, big barrel stouts.
Actually, I just heard somebody was on another podcast mentioning sour meads.
Sour.
There's a guy in Australia who apparently there's a few places in the States that do it, but like I like sour beers. And,
Wow.
I mean, that'd be an interesting change, right? Because it's a very different
Very.
kind of sweetness
Yeah.
profile.
Yeah.
But if you can give it enough tartness and complexity, because meads already have a lot going on.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like if you were going to play with meads at all anymore, that could be a way to go. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
That might be a little more, because, sour beers tend to be a little more acidic, more like wine. That usually fits the palates of people that aren't as into beer.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see how that is. Because like I would say like a lot of the meads that I like enjoy from like places like Schramm's in Michigan, they do have that tartness. I don't know how sour would work, but I'm down to try anything.
And there you go. And then if people want to find you on IG, what's the best place to do that?
NYC Beer Society would be probably the best way.
Right on, right on. So, Perry, any parting words, thoughts, musings?
Just ready to get back out there, and I mean, I'm always hitting the pavement, but let's share with the rest of our listeners, our viewers, whatnot, and show them what else is kicking ass in the city.
Oh, absolutely. BTBT, we are back. BTBT in full effect. Thank you so much for inviting us here to your place in Astoria. Love Astoria. Grew up here. It's, Perry knows how fond I am of Queens. I think we might have mentioned that once or twice on the podcast. It's possible.
It's
How about the hat?
Love Queens. Love, especially Astoria. Love come back to Astoria. Love seeing how, when I grew up here to the neighborhood, what it is now, it's very different in a very positive ways. So great to see it. Great to be back. I always, it's not hard to convince me to come back. I love an excuse, but to come here and have great beer, I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. But Perry knows Queens is the greatest place on earth, right, Perry?
I said, you can have Queens all day, but I'm taking Brooklyn all night.
All right, guys. Anything else you want to share with our audience before we sign out on our first official episode that kicks off, I guess, the new season for Beer Today, Beer Tomorrow?
We got to end with a shout out to Queens. I don't want to end on Brooklyn.
There you go. There you go. Shout out to Queens. I love it. Guys, again, thank you so much for inviting us down here. Thanks so much for hopping on the show, and keep doing what you're doing. It's fucking awesome.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.